Hey guys, it's me. Again tonight, we're traveling back to a time when winter didn't just mean cozy sweaters and overpriced lattes, it meant survival. Picture it, a medieval peasant village. Just as the leaves fall, the wind sharpens and the first frost creeps into your boots. You've got one patched cloak, a leaky roof, and a goat that hates you. Welcome to the cold season, where staying warm is basically a medieval reality show. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. People here, all over the world. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from and why are you here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before dawn, breath clouding in the air above you because your thatch-roofed hut isn't exactly energy efficient. Frost has crept across the inside of the window slits. Your toes are already numb, and that's while you're still in bed. The fire's long gone out, and no one wants to be the first to leave the covers. Except your pig. She's already rooting around the floor like she owns the place. Outside the village is silent, under a light sheet of snow. Chickens refuse to leave the coop, and even the dog looks personally offended by the cold. You know what's coming though? Winter. Not the poetic snow globe kind, just the slow, steady grind of bone-chill boredom and never enough food. Before things get worse, you start sealing up your home the way everyone does, by shoving straw rags and manure into every visible gap. There's no shame in it. Cow dung is surprisingly versatile. You smear it between the cracks in the walls and pack it around the door frame. It doesn't smell great, but at least it blocks the wind. Historians still argue whether most peasants used daub this late in the year, or if it was strictly a summer maintenance thing, but hey, desperate times. Your roof leaks in two places, but patching it now would mean climbing onto slippery, snow-covered thatch. You decide to just shove a few extra buckets under the drips and call it a day. You're already tired and it's not even breakfast. Speaking of breakfast, you scrounge together what little you have, some hard rye bread from last week and a few onions from your storage pit. No meat, no butter, definitely no eggs. The chickens are on strike until spring. You chew, slowly, staring into the cold hearth, pretending the onions are warm stew. You're not alone in this. Everyone in the village is bracing for the months ahead. It's like a group project where everyone's freezing and nobody volunteered. You hear old Tom down the lane swearing loudly his woodpile fell over again. And Marjorie next door is already yelling at her kids to stop trying to eat the candle ends. Winter parenting. Around midday, the village gathers in the square to discuss who still has salt pork, who's got spare wool, and who, by some miracle, still has wine. You trade a cracked bowl and 3 beets for a chunk of lard, and consider that a win. Your hands are already red from cold, even wrapped in woolen rags. Mittens never heard of them. You trudge back to your hut, slipping once on the icy mud. The sky is grey and the sun's already fading. Winter days are ridiculously short. And let's not pretend candles are helping. Your best one barely holds a flame and smells like someone boiled a wet sheep. Still, there's something almost peaceful about the hush of early winter. The fields are empty. The carts are tucked away. Even the tax collector stays home this time of year. You get a few hours of semi-silence before the village kids start shrieking over who stole whose acorn hoard. That night you try to light a fire, but the wood's damp and your flint is dull. After a brief coughing fit, you get a small flame going and huddle close. The smoke pours sideways before finally remembering how chimneys work, assuming you even have one. You sit cross-legged, staring into the flickering light. The pig settles beside you like an oversized hot water bottle. Somewhere in the corner, your cousin sneezes, loudly, 3 times. A sign of the season. And that's just day 1. Welcome to winter. By the second week of cold weather, your fashion sense has fully given up. Not that medieval peasant wear was ever gracing any runways, but now you've gone full survival mode. You're wearing 2 tunics, a pair of coarse woolen hose with more holes than fabric, a belt that's really just a fraying rope, and an outer cloak, stiff with last year's grime. It smells like damp straw and regret, but hey, at least it's warmish. Your hood, it's scratchy and makes your neck itch, but it traps a bit of heat, and in winter, that's currency. You even wrapped cloth around your shoes to make proto-socks, though every step squelches slightly because your footwear is made of badly tanned leather and optimism. You don't own gloves, so your hands stay red and cracked. By late December, the tips start going numb. You rub them together, blow warm air into them, then go back to lugging firewood, which somehow always seems heavier when you're cold. Still, you take odd comfort in the universal truth of peasant layering. If you're wearing every piece of clothing you own, you'll never have to do laundry. That's a win. Historians still argue whether peasants had seasonal outfits or simply wore whatever wasn't on the floor. But looking down at yourself, the answer feels clear. Clothes aren't just for warmth, they're for status. Your neighbour Hilda has a dyed blue cloak which you resent deeply. Blue means someone in her family bartered for indigo, which means they probably had something valuable once, like honey or a cow that didn't immediately die. You've got beige, brown, and probably green once. It's not all envy, though. You help each other out. When your brother rips his only tunic on a nail, you lend him one of yours reluctantly. It's the thin one, the one with the mysterious burn hole. But still. That's love. Under all the wool, your body sweats, while your extremities freeze. It's a strange sensation, like you're simultaneously boiling and dying. And there's no changing clothes midday. If you take anything off, even for a moment, it won't be warm again until April. Fashion also gets creative. Old sacks become scarves. Animal pelts become boots. You even tried tying moss around your ankles once. Didn't work, but you felt inventive. Somewhere out there, a richer person is sipping spiced wine in a velvet robe. Meanwhile, you've made a cape from an old oat sack. Honestly, you kind of rock it. Some mornings your cloak has frozen stiff overnight. You shake it outside, listening to it crack like firewood, then drape it around your shoulders and pretend you're fine. You are not fine. You think back to stories your grandmother told about winters even worse than this, of people sleeping in tree stumps or cutting up their curtains to patch their clothes. You're not quite there. Yet. But it's early in the season, and as the wind whistles through the gaps in your walls, despite your best mud smearing, you can't help but wonder, how did anyone survive like this every year? Here's a fun historical fact. Peasants often shared outerwear or passed it down through generations. Some families kept cloaks for 30 years or more. A fringe detail or stitch pattern might outlive its original owner. You look at your own outfit and try to guess how old it is. 5 years, 10. There's a suspicious patch in the shape of a goose that nobody can explain. One quirky bit of folklore says that wearing a red thread in your clothing protects against winter spirits that steal breath in the night. You don't have red thread, so you use some faded orange yarn. Close enough. Does it work? Who knows, but you haven't been haunted yet. The worst part is the weight. Your layered clothes are heavy. Moving feels like dragging a sack of wet oats across a frozen field. You try to chop wood, but your cloak keeps catching the axe handle. You go to relieve yourself behind the shed, but by the time you've peeled off 3 layers, the urge has passed. And no matter what you wear, your nose stays cold. Bright red, constantly running and occasionally crusted in icicles. You dab it with your sleeve. That sleeve now becomes your dedicated nose sleeve. This is your life now. At least you're not alone. Every villager is waddling around like a medieval burrito. When you pass people in the lane, you don't even recognize them under all the wrapping. You once waved at your neighbor's goat by mistake. Still, you keep bundling up. One more layer, one more rag, anything to stay warm. The hearth is the heart of your home, literally and metaphorically. But don't get romantic about it. This thing is more smoke machine than heater. You crouch beside it each morning, coaxing damp sticks and last night's ashes into something that resembles flame. It's a delicate process. Too little air and it smothers. Too much and it burns out like your enthusiasm for winter. Still you persist. You arrange the kindling just right, blow gently, and offer up a prayer to St. Lawrence, patron of cooks, and coincidentally, people who've been roasted alive. You'd laugh, but it's too early. The fire finally catches, and a tiny cheer erupts from your cousin in the corner. You've won today's heat lottery. Everyone immediately flocks to the hearth like moths in burlap. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof if you're lucky, or a small side vent that lets out more heat than smoke. So the hut fills with a low fog of soot. You squint, you cough, your eyes sting, but it's warm. Smoke clings to everything, your clothes, your bedding, your dreams. By January, everyone in the village smells like bacon that's gone bad. Historians still argue whether open hearth designs were intentional or just accidents that everyone learned to live with. Either way, your lungs are not impressed. Still, this fire is life. You cook over it. You warm your feet. You dry your clothes, though occasionally a sock falls in and becomes a brief fireball. You act like it didn't happen. Around the hearth, the social structure shifts. Whoever starts the fire gets prime sitting rights. Everyone else fans out in concentric rings of descending warmth. It's a slow-motion game of musical chairs, except no one ever moves. On really cold days, you pull a bench up to the hearth and practically drape your legs across the flames. It's dangerous. It's smoky. It's glorious. And when you hear your pig snorting jealously behind you, you shift just enough to let her warm her hooves. Generosity. The hearth also plays therapist. People talk more around it. Your aunt retells that one story about the time she fought off a goose with a ladle. Your brother confesses he's scared of the dark. You admit that you sometimes dream of being rich enough to afford a second blanket. Emotions thaw by firelight. Sometimes you roast things. Not fancy food, mostly turnips, sometimes chestnuts if you're lucky. The occasional beet. You convince yourself it's delicious, even when it's definitely just hot vegetable mush. Someone once dropped a rat into the coals by accident. No one ate it, but now it's part of village lore. And let's not forget the accidents. A toddler's sleeve once caught fire. She's fine. A goat sat on a hot pot. He's not. You learn quickly to respect the hearth's chaotic neutrality. You also try strange heating tricks when the fire won't behave. One old method Heat bricks or stones in the coals, wrap them in cloth and tuck them into bed. It works, until someone forgets to wrap them and burns a hole through the straw mattress. Some even swear by putting a baked turnip in their pockets to warm their hands. You try it once. It sort of works until it leaks. Now your cloak smells like root soup. At night, the hearth fades into red coals, and you tuck in close, hoping the last bit of warmth lingers long enough to lull you to sleep. The fire might die, but the smoke sticks around like a clingy ghost. You inhale it with every breath and wonder how much soot is in your lungs. Don't worry, there's no medieval WebMD to stress you out. As you drift off, curled like a cinnamon roll around a warm rock, you hear the wind scrape against the wooden shutters. You tighten your cloak, turn your face towards the last flicker of fire, and think, only 4 more months of this. You wake up groggy and disoriented, not because you slept well, but because winter sleep hits differently. The kind where your body goes into hibernation mode, but your nose still leaks all night. Outside, the sky is an uninspiring grey, and it'll stay that way until further notice. You roll off your straw mattress and instantly regret it. Cold floor, cold air, cold everything. There's no such thing as morning sun now. You're lucky if you see full daylight for 6 hours. Most days the world glows dimly like someone smeared ash across the sky. The low, pale light makes everyone look vaguely ghostly. Even the chickens look haunted. You shuffle toward the door to open it, just a crack, and instantly slam it shut again. A gust of frozen air knifes in like it owns the place. Nope, not yet. Your eyelashes have already frosted over and you haven't even stepped outside. You're starting to understand why peasants didn't leave home much in winter. Back inside, you try to make the most of the little light available. Tallow candles. They're an option, technically, but they smell like regret and old sheep, and they drip everywhere. One tip: never trim a wick too short unless you want to spend the evening in total darkness arguing with your cousin about who sat on it last. You've got a couple rushlight strips of dried rush plants dipped in fat and held in a crude holder. They flicker with all the enthusiasm of a dying firefly, but they're all you've got. It's no wonder so many tasks get postponed until spring. Spinning, mending, even reading, if you're one of the rare peasants who can read, becomes a real challenge when you can't see your own hands. Historians still argue whether most homes had dedicated work corners with good light, or if people just followed the sun from one side of the room to the other like shivering sunflowers. So what do you do when there's not enough light to work and it's too cold to leave? You nap. A lot. Short bursts of sleep tucked under anything warm. You pull the pig closer. You lay a hay on your legs. You hope no one walks on you. In fact, winter is when medieval peasants likely embraced segmented sleep. 2 chunks of nighttime rest with a waking period in between. You wake around midnight, stare into the fire and maybe say a prayer or whisper a dirty joke if someone's awake. Then back to sleep. Not weird, just your brain adapting to medieval winter rhythms. The lack of light also plays tricks on your mind. You lose track of time. Is it afternoon or nearly nightfall? Did you nap for 10 minutes or 2 hours? The candle's halfway down, but that tells you nothing. You resort to a tried and true peasant timekeeping trick, asking the dog. If he's snoring, it's probably still day. The village takes on an eerie vibe by early evening. Doors creak. The wind howls. You swear you hear whispers, but it's probably just the wind curling through the beams, or your uncle mumbling in his sleep. or a ghost? Who's to say, with so little light, daily routines slow to a crawl? Chores get triaged. Is the goat actually stuck in the mud? No. Then she can wait. Is the well frozen solid again? Probably. Better poke it with a stick later. You learn to live by the rule of, is it urgent enough to freeze my fingers over? The worst is when something breaks. If a pot cracks or a wall beam shifts, fixing it in winter becomes a tragic comedy of errors. You once spent 4 hours patching a hole in the roof with a thatch bundle, 3 rags, and a loaf of stale bread. You don't want to talk about it. Still, there's something cozy in the darkness. Everything slows down. The firelight flickers across the beams. You talk more. You think more. You stare into the flames until they blur into orange ghosts dancing on soot-black walls. Eventually you light a final candle stub and settle in for another long night. Somewhere, someone's lute twangs softly through the walls. You let your eyes close and try not to think about how many more days of this are ahead. Just you, the dark, and the flicker of hope that tomorrow's light might last just a little longer. You step outside just after dawn, or what passes for dawn, and realize today's joy is water duty, your favorite. It's not glamorous, it's not fun, it's just you, a wooden bucket and a half-frozen well that resents your existence. Each step crunches against the icy mud, your shoes barely clinging to the earth. A cold breeze slices through every layer of clothing you own. You pull your hood tighter and wrap your hands around the bucket handle, which feels like grabbing a metal icicle. You wince, but keep moving. That's the thing about being a peasant. Most jobs hurt a little. The village well sits at the edge of the commons, guarded by a creaky rope and pulley system that was probably old during Charlemagne's reign. You eye the rim of the well, already crusted with ice. Your reflection stares back faintly, just enough to remind you you haven't bathed in a while. A long while. You drop the bucket in, listening for the splash. It lands with a slushy plunk, and you start hauling slowly, carefully, because you've dropped the bucket before. Once it cracked, once it froze in place, once it disappeared completely, and no one speaks of that day. This time, it comes up heavy, sloshing, freezing. Success. You haul it onto the ledge and instantly regret touching the metal handle. It bites your fingers like frost-covered fangs. You yank your hand back, shaking out the sting, then carefully carry the bucket home. Water sloshing over the sides and turning your cloak's hem into a soggy fringe. Back inside, everyone is thrilled. Not because they're getting water, but because you went out and they didn't have to. Your uncle slaps your shoulder. It's the peasant equivalent of a standing ovation. Water is a precious commodity in winter. The well freezes over most mornings. You've taken to keeping a sharp stick nearby just to jab at the ice crust. Sometimes you can melt snow, but that involves building up a big fire and wasting hours watching a cauldron slowly turn slush into something drinkable. Not efficient. You wash your hands in the bucket and the cold stings like 1,000 tiny medieval bees. But it's better than smelling like pickled goat, which according to your cousin you currently do. Water's not just for washing, it's for cooking, brewing, scrubbing things that don't want to be scrubbed, and occasionally tossing on the fire when your brother gets too creative with dried dung bricks. One time, he set the corner of the hut on fire. You all agreed never to talk about it again. Bathing. Oh, that's funny. You haven't had a proper bath since midsummer, when the stream wasn't frozen solid. Instead, you wipe yourself down with a rag and maybe a little snow if you're feeling fancy. Historians still argue whether peasants had regular hygiene routines in winter, or if they just relied on dirt, forming a kind of second skin. Based on your current aroma, probably the latter. Your family takes turns doing water duty, but somehow the schedule always mysteriously shifts when it's extra cold. You've noticed that your younger siblings suddenly develop elaborate limps. Your aunt prays louder. Your cousin claims she's allergic to buckets. You're not sure that's even a thing. One strange fact. Some medieval folks believed that icy water shocked the soul closer to heaven. You're not buying it, but you definitely feel closer to something after your fifth splash in the face. You also have to keep an eye on the livestock's water. The pig refuses to drink unless it's lukewarm. You tried explaining thermodynamics to her, but she just knocked over the bucket and walked away. The goat, meanwhile, seems to enjoy licking icicles off the shed door. That's fine. That's one less trip for you. And let's talk about the worst case the bucket breaks. There's no backup. The village cooper is out of wood. You consider using a cooking pot, but then you remember the last time you did that, your aunt used it for stew the next day, and nobody forgave you for a week. So you treat your bucket like royalty. You clean it. You talk to it. You hide it behind the firewood so no one borrows it without asking. In this world, your water bucket is probably your most valuable possession, right after your blanket, your only spoon, and maybe that iron pot with only 3 legs. When you finally finish your third water trip of the day, your cloak is soaked, your arms are sore, and your fingers feel like brittle twigs. You sit by the fire, steam rising faintly from your knees, and wonder why no one ever wrote poems about this part of peasant life. Maybe because their ink froze. The fire's low, the wind's howling, and the moment you've been both anticipating and dreading arrives bedtime. It's not so much a peaceful retreat as it is a nightly battle against cold discomfort, and at least 3 relatives snoring like broken church bells. The bed, or what passes for one, is a straw-filled mattress, flattened into near oblivion by years of shared use. It rests directly on the floor, tucked into a corner to catch residual warmth from the hearth. It smells faintly of mildew, dirt, and human ambition. But you crawl in anyway because the alternative is worse, being cold and upright. Tonight, there are 5 of you crammed into the bed. You, your 2 siblings, your uncle, who always smells like turnips, and your cousin, who kicks in her sleep. You've developed a system, sort of. You rotate positions each night, mostly to avoid developing permanent bed sores on one side. You wedge yourself in between 2 people, pull the animal hide blanket up to your chin, and try not to think about how much warmer the pig is than any of your human relatives. She's just outside the blanket zone, grunting softly like she's judging all of you. Shared sleep was the norm for most medieval peasants. Families didn't have the luxury of privacy or personal space. In fact, beds were such a precious commodity that even some wealthier peasants used rotating sleep schedules. You lay down when someone else got up. You were literally warming their spot. It's not weird. It's efficient. And yet every night brings the same problems. Someone's hogging the blanket. Someone's breathing directly into your ear. Someone's foot is inexplicably freezing cold and jammed against your thigh. You twist groan reposition. And just when you're about to drift off, someone farts. Loudly and unapologetically. You stare into the darkness, willing your brain to shut down. But your mind runs wild. You think about the roof beam creaking. The strange scrape outside, probably the goat. the vague sensation that your uncle just drooled on your shoulder. You try to remember that one lullaby your grandmother used to hum. Something about a blackbird and a barley loaf. Or was it a barley bird and a black loaf? Doesn't matter. The melody calms you a bit. The fire's almost out now. You feel the cold start to seep into your toes, slowly marching upward. To combat the cold, some families sleep with hot stones wrapped in cloth. You have one tonight, and you cling to it like it's the last warm object on earth. Unfortunately, it's already gone tepid, and it kind of smells like cabbage. Still, it's better than nothing. Your aunt across the room snores like a church organ stuck on one awful note. You make a mental note to accidentally nudge her awake tomorrow morning when she least expects it.
You're almost asleep now, eyes fluttering, muscles slackening, when your cousin elbows you in the ribs and whispers, "Did you hear that you did?" A scraping sound from outside. You both go still. Probably just the wind rattling the shed door, or a chicken rearranging its life choices, or a very cold thief with truly poor planning. You pull the blanket tighter and bury your face into the straw. It pokes your cheek, but at least it's not snow. You finally drift off, half dreaming about warm bread and an actual feather mattress. Later you wake up in the dark, for no reason. This happens most nights. You shift, adjusting your limbs like a human game of Tetris. Your hand brushes someone's ear. Someone grumbles. The pig sneezes. This is your life. Cozy, cramped, chaotic. But oddly, you get used to it. And as your breath clouds into the dark above you, you think, at least I'm not sleeping alone in an unheated monastery like Brother Elias. Then you smile. Just a little. Because you know he's probably thinking the same thing about you. Morning arrives without ceremony. There's no rooster, he's buried under hay for warmth, and the sun doesn't so much rise as it sulks behind a thick wall of clouds. You stir awake surrounded by warmth that's mostly generated by other humans, a pig and a suspiciously steaming rock, someone tucked near your feet. Still counts. Everyone groans in sequence. Someone has a leg cramp. Someone else is muttering about having dreamed of roasted onions only to wake and realize they're still chewing last night's stale bread. The day has begun. Today's highlight, breakfast. Not because it's exciting, because it's anything. You gather around the hearth, toss a few twigs onto the coals, and begin the day's sacred ritual, assembling the saddest bowl of food imaginable. This morning, you're lucky. There's leftover pottage from last night, a lumpy, gluey mixture of grains, water, and something that might have been a carrot. You stir it, reheat it, and pretend it's rich stew. A spoonful steams in your hand. It's not tasty exactly, but it's warm, and that counts for more than flavour. Pottage is the peasant MVP of medieval cuisine, a kind of catch-all soup sludge. It adapts to whatever's available, which in winter means mostly root vegetables and stale barley. Historians agree it was eaten constantly and sometimes remained in the same pot for days. You've named yours Kevin. You pair your pottage with crusty bread that could double as a roof tile. You soften it in the stew chew slowly and try not to think about what went into it. Your uncle claims he saw a weevil crawling out of his loaf. You pretend not to hear that. As food stocks dwindle, creativity kicks in. You boil bones from last summer's pig and pretend it's broth. You once tried soaking dried peas in cider. It didn't work, but you called it peasant punch and drank it anyway. One memorable dinner featured boiled cabbage water poured over roasted onions that were, let's be honest, mostly just onion skins. It was crunchy. A surprise texture, as they say. You've also heard rumours of people boiling leather during famine's old shoes, saddles, even belts. It softens up after a few hours, supposedly. You're not quite there yet, but your belt is starting to look suspiciously tender. On truly desperate days, you make gruel. Thin, barely there porridge. The kind of food that mocks you with each bite. You eat it, feel hungrier than before, and wonder if you're somehow burning calories just from chewing. One fringe belief says if you eat snow when hungry, it tricks your stomach into feeling full. You tried it once. All it did was freeze your teeth and make you burp like a haunted kettle. Still you tell others it worked. Pride is free. The idea of 3 meals a day doesn't apply here. You eat when you can. Sometimes twice a day. Sometimes once. Sometimes not at all. Your stomach learns to negotiate with your brain. Okay, we'll stop growling if you just chew something. Anything. You start stretching out food, diluting everything, cutting bread, slices, thinner, scraping pots so clean they shine. A few grains spilled on the floor. Those are now floor peas, and they will be retrieved. And then there's food preservation. You eye the meat hook where one lonely piece of salted pork dangles like a reminder of better times. It's hard as iron and smells like regret, but it's technically edible. You decide to save it for a real emergency. You've been saying that for 3 weeks now. There's always the seed stash. The bag of grains hidden beneath a floorboard or tucked into a corner meant for planting come spring. Everyone knows about it. No one talks about it. It's the emergency of last resort. And every day it becomes just a little harder not to look at it and wonder, what if just a handful? Tonight's dinner is creative. A hot drink made from boiling apple peels and cinnamon bark, both recycled from 2 saints' days ago, followed by a tiny lump of beet mash and a crumb of blue cheese so strong it could walk on its own. It's not a feast, but you laugh anyway. You make jokes. You tell your cousin his bread could be used as a weapon. He laughs, then tries to throw it at you, and it bounces. That sends everyone into hysterics for a full minute, because sometimes laughter's the only thing on the menu. The fire's out again. The embers are cold, the kindling is damp, and your breath hangs in the air like ghost fog. So naturally, it's time to experiment with medieval life hacks for staying warm, none of which come with guarantees. You've tried sleeping with hot stones wrapped in cloth. Results vary. Sometimes they stay warm. Sometimes they burn holes through your blanket. Once a stone cracked in half with a pop so loud you thought the devil had entered the hut. Today you go for the wear your dog method. He's not thrilled about it, but after some mutual bargaining, you petting him, biscuit crumbs, he allows himself to be draped like a furry shawl over your shoulders. Surprisingly effective. You make a mental note to give him an extra beet rind later. Your aunt suggests stuffing dried hay into your tunic for insulation. You try it. It works for about an hour until the itch sets in and you're flailing around like someone invented medieval bees. You spend the next 15 minutes picking straw from your armpits. Another trick, warming up a pot of water and holding it in your lap. Cozy until someone knocks it over and your entire cloak becomes a soggy, steaming puddle. You don't speak to your cousin for 2 hours after that. You even tried sitting on the bread oven. Not inside it on it. After baking, the stone surface stays warm for a while. It's a popular spot in the village. One family installed a bench directly above it. Technically, it's still a fire hazard, but honestly, what isn't? Historians still debate whether peasants had true strategies for in-house heating beyond the hearth. There's evidence of clay warming tiles and animal skin room dividers, but for most of your kind,
it's creative desperation. Whatever you can stuff, stack, or steal for heat, you do. That includes animals. You're not above inviting the pig into bed. She radiates warmth and snores like a sleepy demon, but she's dependable. The goat. 2. Twitchy. She kicked your shin last time. The chickens, possibly cursed. No thanks. There's also the sleeping cap solution. You fashion one from an old linen scrap, it around your ears, and pray it doesn't unravel in your sleep. You wake up tangled anyway like a medieval hostage in your own hat. You recall one old villager saying, "To be warm, move like fire." So you start jumping jacks in the corner of the hut. After 30 seconds, your breath fogs like a dragon's. After a minute, you feel warmer. After 2 minutes, you pull a muscle and nearly knock over the drying herbs. That ends your exercise ambitions for the week. You also try eating hot things to warm your core. A spoonful of boiled barley, a mouthful of near-scalding onion broth. It helps briefly. Then the warmth fades, and you're back to clutching the pig like a medieval teddy bear. One popular trick, placing embers into a ceramic pot, a brazier, and keeping it under the table or bed. You try it once. It warms your feet and nearly sets your blanket alight. Fire safety isn't really a thing here. You just accept that anything warm might also kill you. The village elders talk about the deep freeze, a cold snap so bad that ponds froze solid, ale turned to slush, and chamber pots shattered. You're not sure if that's folklore or memory, but you're hoping this year won't be that year. Sometimes the only warmth is from each other. You and your family pile close, limbs intertwined, cloaks layered like lasagna. It's not glamorous. Someone always smells faintly of boiled cabbage. But together, you're a bit less cold and a bit more human. You spend your evenings inventing new warmth schemes. A heated stick you wave over your face, wrapping your arms in dishcloths. Sleeping under the table, it traps heat. Better surprisingly, you're one failed experiment away from stuffing warm potatoes into your socks. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Because at the end of the day, survival isn't about comfort. It's about tiny, stubborn rituals. Lighting the fire, warming a stone, wrapping the dog around your neck. You get through one night, then the next. And when you wake up with icicles in your hair, you just laugh. Then cry a little. Then make more soup. You can tell winter's deepening when everyone starts coughing in harmony. Not a light, polite cough, though. These are full-throated, lung-rattling symphonies of suffering. You wake up to your uncle hacking into the rafters, your cousin wheezing like an old bellows, and your own throat scratching like you swallowed a pine cone. You tell yourself it's just the smoke from the hearth. And to be fair, you do breathe in the equivalent of a small bonfire every night. But after the third day of wheezing, you begin to suspect you're officially winter sick. You're not alone. Nearly every household has someone huddled in bed under too many cloaks, sipping onion water and muttering about saints. The cold doesn't just freeze your toes, it invites a whole parade of medieval illnesses, agues, chills, catarrhs, and something ominously called the winter humours. Your symptoms: runny nose, burning chest, dizziness, and a general desire to never get out of bed again. Your aunt declares you've caught the lung cold, which could mean anything from mild bronchitis to say your prayers now. Diagnosis isn't exactly an exact science. Luckily, you have a healer in the village. She's not a doctor. Those only exist in cities, and even then, they mostly bleed you until you faint. No, your healer is an old woman named Nan. She smells like burnt thyme and insists she once cured a man by whispering into his soup. Nan arrives wrapped in 12 layers of shawls, and immediately begins poking your ribs and squinting at your tongue. "You've got the damp," she says gravely, as if that explains everything. You nod solemnly. Of course, the damp. She brews you a potion made of dried nettles, garlic, and something that might be frog legs. It tastes like regret and bog water. You drink it all because refusing Nan is bad luck, and because honestly, it's kind of working. She rubs goose fat on your chest, which sounds made up, but actually helps. The fat seals in warmth, and the smell clears your sinuses in the most aggressive way imaginable. You feel like a roast chicken, but a slightly healthier one. To pass the time, you huddle by the fire and sip broth. People bring you offerings, a handful of dried mint, a strip of cloth soaked in vinegar, and once a weird pebble blessed by the blacksmith. You thank them all. At this point, superstition is comfort. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants understood contagion. There's evidence of isolation practices, sick folks being kept in corners or even outbuildings, but most families didn't have the luxury of distance. So you just share your coughs, like communal bread, or inherited debt. There's also the religious side. Some believe winter illness is penance. Others say it's demons in the lungs. You once heard a priest suggest sin collects in the throat. That might explain your cousin's particular hacking fits. You try a few other remedies. A poultice of hot onions, steam inhalation from boiled herbs, a charm made of knotted red string. It's hard to tell which helps, but doing something always feels better than nothing. The worst nights are the fever dreams. You toss and sweat under a pile of itchy blankets, half-conscious, mumbling about cabbages and snow demons. You wake up drenched and disoriented, convinced the pig spoke to you in Latin. She probably didn't. Eventually, you start to feel better. The cough fades. Your appetite creeps back. You smell bread and don't immediately gag. A good sign. But you don't forget. Winter illness humbles you. It reminds you that even a sniffle in a world without antibiotics can be dangerous. You develop a new respect for garlic goose fat and Nan's terrifying soup. And next time someone coughs, you silently slide a rag over your face and back away, casually of course. Can't be too obvious. It's not all misery and mucus in the cold months. Believe it or not, medieval winters had their festive moments too. Just because everything's frozen and you're living off turnips doesn't mean you can't party like it's 1349. You wake up one morning to the sound of church bells and not the usual mournful toll. These are celebratory chimes. Today is a feast day, which means three things. No chores, sort of slightly better food, if you're lucky, and someone attempting music. Prepare your ears. The local saint being honoured is Saint Brigid, or maybe St. Felix. No one's really sure. But the important thing is that it's an excuse to gather, laugh, and pretend winter isn't a massive cosmic punishment. You pull on your least stained tunic, smear your boots with tallow so they creak less, and trudge to the village commons. The snow crunches beneath your feet, but your spirit's lighter today. A feast day means a break in the monotony, a reason to smile, a tiny rebellion against the gloom. When you arrive, the scene is modest but cheerful. Someone has strung dried berries and pine twigs along the fence. A table creaks under the weight of bread beans, and miracle of miracles, a roast bird. Probably a goose. Possibly not. No one asked too many questions. Feasting in winter wasn't rare. It was strategic. Villages often timed celebrations with moments when preserved foods were at their best or nearing expiration.
Salted meats, dried fruits, and hard cheeses make their appearance, and you savour every bite like it's your last meal. Which honestly, in this weather, it could be. One family brews a special batch of sour ale. It's cloudy bitter and suspiciously chewy. You take a swig and nod approvingly because anything mildly intoxicating is basically sacred this time of year. Then the mummers arrive. Ragged performers in masks and patchwork costumes acting out old tales with questionable choreography and loud improvisation. You're not entirely sure what the play is about. Possibly a saint, a dragon, or two pigs fighting over a turnip. But it's hilarious. Especially the part where the dragon gets tangled in a clothesline and collapses dramatically. Laughter echoes across the frozen ground. You catch yourself smiling, then laughing harder than you have in weeks. For a few hours, the cold doesn't matter. The hunger fades. You feel human again. Someone breaks out a lute. It has 2 working strings and a deeply suspicious tuning, but the player doesn't care. He strums a lively jig, and before long boots are stomping, cloaks are swishing, and a full-blown peasant dance is happening on the packed snow. You join in because your feet haven't had fun since September. Later, a storytelling session forms around the fire pit. You sit beside your cousin, cup of hot cider in hand, and listen to tales of ghostly monks, talking animals, and the legendary time old Marjorie sneezed so hard she cracked a beam. That one might actually be true. And here's a quirky fact. Medieval people believed winter celebrations helped ward off evil spirits lurking in the long nights. Light laughter and shared meals weren't just luxuries, they were defenses. You don't really believe that, but tonight the darkness seems a little less scary. As the sun dips low, you help carry leftover bread to the church, where it'll be shared with those who couldn't attend. Even in scarcity, generosity survives. A neighbour hands you a candle stub, and you treasure it like gold. You walk home with sore cheeks from laughing and a belly just barely full. For one night, you got to forget the endless cold, to be more than a body surviving winter. You were part of something warm, and as you slip back into your straw bed, you whisper, "Same time, next feast." The pig snorts in agreement. The fire's low, the stew's reheating again, and the wind outside is doing its best impersonation of a dying banshee. It's the perfect night for stories, and in winter stories are more than entertainment. They're a survival tactic. You're tucked into your usual corner of the hut, blanket draped over your shoulders, a wooden mug of cider clutched in your hands. Not the good cider, mind you. This batch has gone vinegary, but you pretend it's intentional. Sharp, you call it. Complex. Your little brother starts things off with his favourite, the tale of the monk who challenged death to a chess match. He always forgets half the plot, adds an exploding goat, and somehow wins the game in the end. Creative liberties, as usual. Next comes your cousin with a classic, the headless knight who roams the moors in search of his helmet. Everyone in the hut nods along like they haven't heard it 100 times. Your uncle adds sound effects poorly. Storytelling is an art form in your village. You don't need books. You don't need scripts. You just need a dark corner, a flickering fire, and enough imagination to turn turnips into goblins. Tonight the theme leans toward the spooky. Your aunt swears she once saw a will-o'-the-wisp luring a sheep into the marsh. Your neighbour mutters about the haunted tree near the old road, the one that leans just a little too far east. You nod solemnly. Everyone knows trees can be jerks. Folklore is the peasants' theatre newspaper and therapy session all rolled into one.
These aren't just tales. They're memory warning and comfort passed down by candlelight. Historians still argue whether such oral traditions were consistent across villages, but in your corner of the world, the haunted mill and the cursed spoon are as real as taxes. Tonight, you decide to share your own favourite, the one about the snow witch who weaves frost into people's dreams. She doesn't speak, just stares from the tree line, waiting for you to close your eyes. The pig grunts nervously. Good, that means it's working. You get a few laughs, a few shivers, and someone swears they saw her once during a blizzard. That person is your brother, who clearly just wanted attention, but it works. The fire crackles, the stories spiral, and for a little while the walls of your tiny hut feel like a cathedral of imagination. Even mundane objects take on mythical weight in winter. The dented spoon becomes the relic of St. Spoonsworth. A lump of coal, the heart of a fallen dragon. You once convinced a friend that your patched-up sock had protective powers. You tried to borrow it. You still haven't gotten it back. Laughter rolls through the hut, like waves interrupted only by the occasional sneeze or pig snore. Your uncle tries to sing an old song about a man who turned into a beat because of bad manners. Everyone joins in on the chorus, off-key but enthusiastic. You'd be amazed what joy can come from a half-frozen village filled with hungry people. There's a magic in shared absurdity. In a world with few luxuries, humour is one of the richest things you have. And not all stories are old. Someone tells a tale about Brother Elias slipping on frozen goose droppings. That happened yesterday. It's already legend. Even riddles make the rounds. What's colder than a witch's smile and stiffer than old bread? The answer, apparently, is your cousin's dancing. She throws a piece of crust at you in retaliation. You lean back against the wall, smile, fading into calm. The fire crackles lower now, but the warmth lingers in the laughter, still echoing off the beams. These nights of stories are the glue that keeps winter from pulling you apart. They remind you that you're not just surviving, you're still capable of joy, even if your socks are damp and your dinner had the consistency of mashed pebbles. The last story of the night is a quiet one. No witches, no ghosts, just a tale of a spring morning long ago when the first crocus bloomed through the snow. Someone saw it and cried. Not because it was beautiful, but because it meant the waiting was over. You hold on to that one as you settle into bed, whispering to yourself soon. The snow is thicker today, piled like old linen across every roof and fence post. You wake to silence, thick, pressing silence, only broken by the low shuffle of someone stoking the fire and a pig sneezing. Again. There's no going outside. The wind howls, flinging snow sideways against the shutters, and even the bravest villagers admit defeat. That means one thing: indoor work. The kind you've put off for weeks, and now trapped with nothing but time and your own relatives, you have no excuse. You start with weaving. The basket you began 3 winters ago still has no bottom. Today might finally be the day. You sit cross-legged by the fire, splitting thin willow branches, dipping them in water to soften, and trying not to poke your eye out. Again. Weaving isn't glamorous, but it's vital. Baskets carry firewood, grain, laundry. Sometimes the neighbour's baby don't ask. And every household has at least 3 in varying stages of disrepair. Yours are mostly dis. Across the hut, your cousin patches a cloak with thread that looks like it's made from regret. Your sister is carding wool with slow rhythmic motions. Every so often someone grunts approval or curses under their breath. This is medieval productivity at its finest. Spinning wool is almost hypnotic. You tried it once. The spindle rolled under the bench, the wool tangled, and you somehow ended up with something that looked like a sad, grey caterpillar. You haven't been allowed near the spindle since. Sewing is more your speed. You pick up a tunic with a gaping armpit and begin stitching with slow, clumsy care.
Your aunt tells you your seam is crooked. You tell her so is her nose. She laughs. You both keep sewing. Historians agree that winter was a time of indoor labour, necessary tasks that got pushed aside during harvest and planting. Clothes were mended, tools were repaired, and new items were cobbled together out of scraps. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept people clothed and fed. And not all work was serious. You carve a spoon from soft wood, whittling it slowly, watching the shape emerge like magic. By the end of the day, it's more wooden blob than spoon, but still better than nothing. You declare it ceremonial and demand it be used only for turnips. Everyone agrees. No one will remember this promise tomorrow. In the corner, someone attempts to fix a broken stool. There's more swearing than progress. The pig tries to help. She is politely escorted away. There's a strange peace in the rhythm of this day. The storm outside growls and rattles the beams, but inside you're all tucked together, busy with your hands, half telling stories and half dozing between tasks. It's warm, not from the fire, but from the shared momentum of small efforts. You rummage through an old basket of scraps and find a bit of dyed fabric, faded blue. It's a rare colour, and you don't remember where it came from, but you stitch it onto your sleeve like a badge. Your cousin scoffs. You say it's fashion. You're starting a trend. There's something satisfying about fixing what's broken. Sewing a button, patching a hole, sharpening a knife. You can't control the weather or the hunger, but you can make sure your only pair of socks doesn't disintegrate. That's power. And the best part, you don't have to be outside. No hauling buckets, no slipping on ice, no frostbitten fingers. Just the fire, the work, and a lot of bickering about who used the last of the needle thread. One odd task involves making candles tallow, of course. You've got a pot of animal fat melting on the hearth and bits of old wicks tied to sticks. You dip. You cool. You repeat. After 4 hours, you've made 6 stubby candles and filled the hut with the delicate aroma of beef-scented doom. Later, you wrap everything up and hang your half-finished projects on pegs. It's not perfect, but it's progress. And progress in winter feels like a minor miracle. You end the day rubbing resin on a cracked spoon and muttering to yourself about how it might still work. Your cousin throws a scrap of wool at you. You throw it back. The pig steals it. Game over. Outside, the wind finally begins to die down. The snow has buried everything in silence, but inside the hut buzzes with small, soft life, the shuffle of feet, the click of a spindle, the gentle sigh of someone falling asleep in their work shirt. You hang up your crooked new spoon with pride. It may not hold soup, but it definitely holds winter. You don't mean to yell at the chicken, but she's just pooped on your boot again, and this is the 3rd time today. It's not personal. It's just life when you share your living space with livestock. Because yes, your home, your sacred little drafty hut, isn't just shelter for people. It's a boarding house for animals too. Chickens, a goat, the family pig, and occasionally the neighbour's stray duck have all claimed corners of the room, and none of them pay rent. It's a mess. A noisy, smelly, flapping, snorting mess. The chickens sleep on a beam overhead and occasionally fall off in their sleep.
The goat chews everything, clothes rope, sometimes your hair. The pig, surprisingly polite, tends to keep to her own bedding and only interrupts when she's hungry or bored, which is constantly. You sweep up after them with a broom made from bound twigs, muttering under your breath like a grumpy innkeeper. The straw-covered floor is less floor and more shared compost experiment. It rustles when you walk and smells like, well, let's just say you've gone nose-blind. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants really kept animals indoors year-round or just during extreme cold. The answer, it depends. But in your case, yes, because if you left them outside, they'd freeze. And you'd lose your precious source of warmth, eggs, milk, and occasional entertainment. There's also a strange comfort in their presence. You wake to the pig snuffling gently at your feet, a warm, heavy reminder that at least someone in this hut is always cozy. The goat is less affectionate, but serves as a surprisingly reliable alarm clock. She bleats exactly 20 minutes before dawn, every day, without fail. Of course, sharing space means sharing everything: warmth, food scraps, and unfortunately, disease vectors. If someone starts coughing, human or animal, you brace for the whole room to follow.
You once watched a chicken sneeze and immediately covered your own mouth. Instinct. Keeping the animals inside also comes with weird etiquette. For example, never sit too close to the goat unless you're okay with being headbutted.
Always check your boots before putting them on. Chickens like warm spaces. Don't stare at the pig when she's eating. She will take it personally.
And yet they're part of the family.
You talk to them more than you talk to your cousins. The chicken in particular seems to respond to sarcasm. You've tested this. Feeding them is a whole side job. You save scraps, peelings, and the occasional oops stew disaster for the animals. The goat eats almost anything. The chickens are picky. The pig, she's a culinary garbage disposal. You milk the goat each morning with freezing fingers. Sometimes she kicks the bucket over. You try not to cry. You remind yourself this milk is for cheese, for trade, for survival, and maybe for that weird recipe your aunt insists will cure everything from fevers to heartbreak. The chickens, bless them, still lay a few eggs despite the cold. You find them nestled in straw, warm and miraculous. You treat each one like a treasure. Crack one, and it's a family event. Scramble one, and you're a hero. You've also begun to understand animal moods. The pig sulks when it's too cold.
The goat gets feisty when the snow falls. The chickens gossip. No, really they cluck in a pattern, and you're convinced they're judging you. There's one little chick who seems especially fond of you. She hops onto your shoulder and preens your hair. You name her Princess Hayseed. Your cousin mocks you. You remind him she's contributed more warmth to your life than he has. Argument 1. Sometimes at night, when the wind is howling and the fire's low, you find yourself grateful for the snorting, bleating, clucking chaos. Without them, the silence would be unbearable. Because as much as the animals drive you mad, they also remind you of spring, of eggs, of growing things, of movement. They're messy and loud, but they're alive. And in winter, that's everything. You hear her before you see her, the village healer Nan, trudging up the path in her layered shawls, muttering about wind spirits and someone's disobedient spleen. She pushes the door open without knocking, because no one knocks, and announces, "I've come to check your humours." You glance at your cousin, who is currently lying under 3 cloaks, 2 pigs, and what appears to be half a basket of hay. He groans dramatically. Classic. Nan gets right to work. She pulls out a bundle of herbs, a pouch of something that smells like sweaty sage and a carved wooden spoon she refers to as the persuader. No one wants to know what that means. In medieval life, the healer was somewhere between doctor-priest, chemist, therapist, and professional eyebrow lifter. You never quite know what she's going to prescribe. Last time, it was mashed leek poultice for your foot. The time before, hanging an onion above the doorway to absorb bad moods. It worked. You stopped yelling about the goat. Mostly. She leans over your cousin and begins poking. "You're too cold," she declares. "Too dry. Maybe melancholic. Possibly cursed. Or just lazy." He grunts. She nods knowingly. Historians still argue whether medieval humorism, the belief that health relied on the balance of 4 bodily fluids, was taken seriously by peasants. Based on Nan's level of commitment, the answer is absolutely, and with dramatic flair. She brews a tea made from dried rose hips, wild thyme, and a sprinkle of powdered snail shell. You watch it simmer and pretend it doesn't look like someone boiled a frog's laundry. Your cousin drinks it. He immediately burps, turns a bit green, and announces he feels incredible. You suspect placebo or mild poison. Hard to tell with Nan. Then it's your turn. You're not sick exactly, but she insists prevention is better than treatment. She checks your pulse, pinches your cheek, and squints into your left eye like it owes her money. You need warming herbs, she decides. And a bath. A bath. In winter, you shiver just thinking about it. She laughs. "Don't worry, she says I'll use goat milk." Very fashionable. Even queens do it. You suspect she made that up, but you don't argue. No one argues with Nan. Later, she rubs garlic-infused oil on your feet while explaining that the root of all winter illnesses is a bad attitude and insufficient pickled radish consumption. She may be onto something. You've been notably radish deficient lately. As she works, she talks. About the seasons, the stars, the way frost makes footprints of things we can't see. Her voice is raspy, comforting, like old firewood. You lean back, almost soothed by the rhythm of her rambling. One quirky belief she shares: if you dream of snow falling upward, it means the spring will come early. You file that away for future bragging rights. Your cousin mutters something about snow goats. Nan nods like this makes perfect sense. She also believes your house is too cold because of an imbalance between the north wind and emotional clutter. She suggests moving the firewood pile 3 feet to the left. You do it. Why not? By evening, Nan has treated 4 people, blessed 2 spoons, scolded a goat for impure thoughts, and tied a clove of garlic to the front door. To ward off fever, she explains. Also, bad visitors. Also, arguments. You're not sure if you believe in her magic. But here's the thing, after her visits, people do seem better. Maybe it's the tea. Maybe it's the warmth of her hands. Maybe it's the simple fact that someone showed up, paid attention, and said, "You'll be all right." She leaves as night falls, bundled against the wind, muttering a song to herself about boiling apples and banishing phantoms. And as you close the door behind her, the hut smells like herbs and strange hope. You crawl into bed a little warmer, a little calmer, and you think, maybe spring isn't that far away after all. You wake to the clang of the church bell echoing across the frosty village. It's not Sunday. It's not a feast day. It's just cold. And when it's this cold, even the saints can't save you from frostbite and poor decisions. You bundle up 3 tunics, 2 cloaks, and a desperate prayer, and step outside. The world is iced over. Your breath
hangs like smoke. Your boots crunch against a crust of snow, and every step feels like walking through someone else's bad dream. Today's goal: attend the morning service. Not because you're feeling especially devout, but because it's one of the only heated buildings in town. Heated, of course, being a relative term. The church has stone walls, drafty windows, and a few candles bravely flickering in the cold. But at least there's space to huddle in groups and pretend the Holy Spirit radiates thermal energy. As you trudge there, you pass villagers doing the same, heads down cloaks flapping each of you, wondering if piety can thaw toes. The old priest, Father Wulfric, stands in the doorway, steam puffing from his beard. He welcomes you in with the solemn enthusiasm of a man who's been fighting wind since 1123. Inside the pews are packed, not with tourists or nobles, but with peasants, wrapped like laundry bundles. You settle into a spot between your cousin and a barrel of holy water that started to freeze around the edges. You quietly wonder if that makes it extra blessed or just mildly cursed. The service begins with a hymn, sung off-key and half-heartedly. No one has the energy for full devotion. Still, you mouth the words not because you're deeply spiritual, but because your lips are frozen, and this counts as exercise. Father Wulfric's sermon is, let's say, thematic. He speaks of suffering as a gift of winter, as God's test, and of the joys that await those who persevere. You glance around. Half the congregation is asleep. The other half is trying not to sneeze. The idea of religious endurance isn't just abstract. In a world, this harsh belief can be the thing that keeps people upright. Historians still debate how much genuine faith peasants held versus how much was habit pressure or community ritual. But when you're cold, sick and tired of turnips, the promise of a paradise without winter is compelling. There's a bit of drama when the choir boy slips on a patch of melted snow and knocks over a candle. No fire, thankfully. Just some loud apologies and a round of sneezes. It's the most exciting thing that's happened all week. After the sermon, people linger not for extra prayers, but to steal a bit more time in a semi-warm space. You trade news with neighbours who's out of onions, who's seen a fox near the hen house, and who might still have a bit of cider hidden away. Community thrives in these small, whispered exchanges. On the way out, you dip your fingers in the holy water, which now resembles slush. You cross yourself quickly and hope your eyebrows don't freeze mid-blessing. Back outside, the cold hits you like a sermon in Latin, confusing and relentless. The sky's the colour of old parchment, and the wind is picking up again. You pull your hood tighter and begin the slow walk home. The road is slippery, the puddles frozen solid, and your cousin keeps singing the hymn in falsetto just to irritate you. You consider shoving him into a snowbank, purely as a spiritual exercise. Back home, you peel off your outer layers and rejoin the family by the fire. The pig has claimed your seat again. You give her a nudge. She ignores you. Typical. You settle into the familiar warmth, not from the fire, but from the shared breath and quiet closeness of people enduring something together. The church might be drafty and confusing, but in a season like this, even cold hope is better than no hope at all. And when Father Wulfric said that joy returns in spring, you almost believed him. Almost. It's laundry day, which sounds productive until you remember what laundry in a medieval winter actually means. Spoiler, it involves frozen fingers, stiff shirts, and the existential dread of rinsing under a sky that actively wants you dead. You begin with a sigh. The pile of dirty clothes smells like a combination of goat onions and mystery. You gather them up, dump them in a wooden tub, and eyeball the freezing water with appropriate suspicion. You consider whispering a prayer or a curse, possibly both. The water stings your hands immediately. Your fingertips go numb by the second shirt. By the third, you're questioning every decision that led you to this moment, including being born in a century where central heating is a foreign concept. Soap. Technically, a grey, lumpy bar made from animal fat and lye. It smells like old bacon and vengeance, but it gets the job done. Mostly. You scrub like your dignity depends on it, which it does, because your tunic has a suspicious stain shaped exactly like a goat hoof. Historians note that medieval peasants typically did laundry infrequently, especially in winter. Not out of laziness, but because wet clothes in the cold could literally kill you. If your shirt doesn't dry by nightfall, you sleep damp. And damp equals dead. So you wring everything out until your arms ache, then hang it on a rope across the room near the fire. Slowly, your hut transforms into a kind of lumpy, steaming laundry cave. Socks dangle from ceiling beams. Tunics sway like spectral villagers. The goat stares at a drying rag like it owes her money. And then there's the drying smell. Wet wool plus smoke equals an olfactory experience you'll never forget. You sneeze 3 times and declare the house spiritually cleansed. Your aunt is not amused. Meanwhile, someone knocks over the laundry tub. Water soaks the straw floor and starts creeping toward the pig's corner. She protests loudly and relocates herself under the table where she'll sulk for the next hour. You hang the last tunic with pride and mild frostbite. Your cousin offers to help by holding a sock up to the fire. It immediately catches flame. Everyone yells. The sock is lost. You hold a brief moment of silence. When the clothes finally dry, they're stiff as parchment. You could prop one of your shirts up in a corner and call it a scarecrow. You beat them against a bench to soften them. It works sort of. The shirt still stands on its own, but now it leans a little. Then comes the folding. You fold one garment. You toss the rest into a basket and call it good enough. Nobody in this hut has ever folded anything properly anyway. That's a luxury for tailors and nobles. You're a professional layer wearer. Wrinkles build character. While you rest, someone decides to rewash their handkerchief in the leftover water. Brave. That water now contains soap dirt and possibly the secrets of the universe. You don't judge. You've done worse. Oddly, the hut feels cozier with clean-ish clothes drying overhead. There's a sense of accomplishment even if everything smells like smoked sheep. At least for tonight, you won't have to put on a shirt that could pass as armor. Progress. One curious fact: in some places peasants believed washing clothes on a Friday cursed them with bad harvests. Others said winter washing angered the spirits of the snow. You're not superstitious, but you do check over your shoulder just in case. Finally, as the last sock dries a survivor, you curl up beside the fire and think laundry may be awful, but wearing something vaguely clean to bed tonight, that's a luxury you didn't expect. And you smile briefly before the pig flops onto your blanket and claims half your warmth. You're not sure what part of your body hurts more, your lower back from hauling wood or your fingers from snapping off in the cold. Probably both. Winter doesn't ask permission. It just grinds your bones slowly day after day. Today's job. More of the same, hauling, chopping, carrying, and trying not to scream every time you step on a frozen chicken turd. The chores haven't lessened. They've just gotten heavier, colder, and somehow ruder. You start with firewood. Again. You trudge out to the pile behind the hut, now half buried under snow, and mysteriously smaller than you remember. Either someone's been stealing, or the laws of wood mass are a cruel joke. Splitting logs is a full-body workout. Your axe is dull, your gloves are non-existent, and your boots slide with every swing. You bring the axe down hard, once, twice, 3 times, until the log splits with a satisfying crack that echoes through the still air. A small victory. A splintery cold, deeply exhausting victory. Your breath comes out in puffs. Your cloak is damp with snow. And your hands wooden blocks at this point. You only realize you've got a splinter when someone points out you're bleeding. You stare blankly at your thumb. Neat. Historians often highlight how constant physical labor was the norm for medieval peasants, even during winter. You'd agree, except constant doesn't quite capture it. It's relentless, the kind of repetitive effort that wears you down, not just physically, but spiritually. Like the universe is testing how many times one person can carry the same bucket before giving up. Next chore. Frozen laundry water needs to be dumped. You pick up the wooden basin, now a solid block of frozen shirts, and regret, and heave it toward the edge of the field. You trip. You curse. The ice inside barely shifts. It's now less laundry and more textile sculpture. Back inside, you're given a new task, grinding grain. With a hand-cranked quernstone that weighs more than your self-esteem, you sit on the floor, legs crossed, pushing the heavy top stone in a circle while muttering threats at the wheat berries. Your arms ache. Your patience vanishes. But eventually you get flour. Technically, it's a little gritty. You say it's rustic. The goat watches judgmentally from the corner. You don't like her tone. Then it's time to deal with chamber pots. You don't want to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it. But someone's got to do it. You carry the sloshing pot outside, dump it behind the shed, and try not to cry into your scarf. This isn't even a bad day, really. No major accidents. No collapsing beams. Just the usual, your aunt shouting about misplaced firewood, your cousin breaking a spoon, and the pig knocking over a bucket of half-frozen soup. Routine chaos. You pause to look around. The sun's already low, glowing faintly behind a haze of cloud and smoke. A group of kids are playing with bundled straw like it's a doll. One of them slips. They all laugh. Even in this bleak, grey world, there's room for play. That gives you enough of a boost to finish one last task, patching the shed roof. You climb up with a bundle of thatch and some rope, nearly slide off twice, and wedge the materials into place. Is it secure? Probably not. But you'll call it future you's problem. By the time you get back to the hut, your arms feel like noodles and your legs like stilts. You collapse near the hearth, hands, raw face crusted with sweat and smoke. Your sister hands you a cup of warm water. You sip it like it's gold. It's not glamorous. It's not even clean. But this is what winter work looks like. Unseen, constant, necessary. You don't get applause. You don't get praise. But you do get heat soup and a place to sit where the pig probably won't sit on you. And for tonight, that's enough. It starts with a wind that howls instead of whistles. Low, angry, relentless. The kind of wind that doesn't knock politely, but barges in through the shutters and announces, "This is going to be bad." Everyone in the hut feels it. The fire is struggling. The walls creak. Even the pig buries her snout deeper under the straw. Outside, the snow falls sideways, sharp as splinters. It's not a gentle flurry. It's a siege. You brace for what the village calls the long freeze, that dreaded part of winter when everything turns harder, darker, and colder than you thought possible. It doesn't come every year, but when it does, the entire world seems to shrink down to one question. Will we make it through this? Your breath clouds the room. Frost creeps across the beams inside the hut. The water bucket freezes overnight. Again. You try to break it with a stick and end up cracking the bucket. The stick breaks too. Classic. Food stocks are low. The turnips are gone. The bread is gone. The dried beans are suspiciously fewer than you remember. You don't point fingers, but you do glare at your cousin when he walks past, chewing nothing and looking too satisfied. Your aunt, normally calm, starts rationing. 1 ladle of soup per person. No seconds. The soup is basically hot water with a single wilted onion slice, floating like a shipwreck. But it's warm, and right now that's more important than taste. The seed stash is discussed. Quietly, cautiously. It's meant for planting come spring, the next season of life. But spring feels so far away, and the kids are crying at night from hunger. Someone suggests using just a few handfuls. You know what that means. Historians have long debated whether seed grain was ever eaten in emergencies. The records are vague. The silence, however, speaks volumes. Because everyone knows it's wrong, but sometimes the choice is between future hunger and now hunger. You go to sleep that night not knowing if the stash will still be there in the morning. And then the livestock starts dying. First a chicken, then a goat. The cold seeps into their bones. You bury them behind the shed under frozen soil. You don't cry. There's no time for that. Instead you say a short blessing, hold your hands over the fire for longer than usual, and try to remember how it felt to see green grass. The wind doesn't let up. It keeps pushing snow against the door, piling it up, until you have to dig your way out, just to use the toilet trench. The outhouse itself is buried. You resort to using a chamber pot more frequently, then have to fight the pig for space near the door to dump it. The mood in the hut darkens. There are fewer jokes, fewer stories. People snap at one another over things that wouldn't matter in autumn, where the ladle's kept, who used the good bowl, who gets the corner near the fire. It's not about those things, of course. It's about the creeping fear. What if this storm doesn't end? Then comes a crack in the ceiling, literally. A beam swells from the ice and pops. Snow falls through. You spend 2 hours patching it with straw, mud, and desperation. Your hands are so cold by the end, you can't feel the needle when you sew up your glove. You poke yourself twice and only notice when the blood hits the snow. But even now, in the thick of it, people adapt. You start melting snow for water. You invent a game with the kids where you name icicles based on how much soup they look like. The winner, 3-bean stalactite. And you learn strange skills, like how to rewarm frozen toes using hot potatoes, or how to stretch a scrap of dried pork into a stew that tastes miraculously like something. Eventually, after what feels like 100 years of night, the wind softens. The snow eases. And for the first time in days, you hear something new silence. No storm, no screaming wind, just breath. just the crackling of the fire that somehow, against all odds, didn't go out. You step outside. The sky is pale. Not blue, not yet. But there's a softness to the clouds, a gentleness, like the world has exhaled. You survived the long freeze, barely, but you did. You almost miss it the first sign, a drip, just a single, slow drop, falling from the edge of the thatch roof, landing on the packed snow below, with a soft, hesitant plip. Then another, and another. You stare at it for a long moment, eyes narrowed, heart confused. Is it a trick? Is it just a warmer moment before another storm rolls in? You've been fooled before, but this time, something feels different. The air smells well, it smells. After weeks of bitter nose-numbing freeze, you can actually catch a scent: damp earth, rotting straw, a bit of pig. It's not poetic, but it's real. And it means the ground is waking up. Inside the hut, everyone moves slower today, but not from exhaustion, from caution. There's a strange hush, like the whole household is holding its breath, waiting to see if winter's really backing off. You all remember last year when a false thaw was followed by 3 feet of surprise snow and 1 very unlucky goat. You push open the door and step outside, boots squelching in slush. Not ice, not snow, slush. It's hideous. It's glorious. You grin like someone who just remembered spring exists. The other villagers are outside too, emerging from their huts like cautious badgers. No one says anything at first. You all just look at the puddles, the sagging icicles, the sky that's almost possibly maybe a little bit blue. Your cousin whispers, "It's happening," and you believe her. The birds aren't back yet, but you hear a distant caw. That's enough. You decide it was a sign. You spread the word that the thaw has begun. No one tells you to hush. Everyone wants to believe it. You even see a child running without slipping. His boot splashes through a puddle, soaking his leg. He doesn't care. He's laughing. It's the best sound you've heard in months. Inside, the fire burns lower, but no one rushes to feed it. You all sit near it, not on top of it. That's new. Your sister uncovers a clay pot of honey you'd saved for midwinter. It's technically past midwinter, but you all decide today is worthy. You spread a little on barley bread, and for a second, life tastes like luxury. Then your aunt says what everyone's thinking. We might make it. It's the first time she's said something hopeful in weeks. You try not to get emotional. You fail. Just a little. Historians note that the first signs of spring were deeply symbolic to peasants, not just a change in weather, but a lifting of a spiritual weight. When every day is survival hope, becomes a tangible, necessary thing. You feel it in your chest now, the tiniest flicker of ease. You check on the seed stash. Still mostly intact, though someone's definitely taken a sampling. You don't get mad. Honestly, if you had to chew one more boiled acorn, you might have done the same. The chickens are louder. The pig has more energy. The goat, well, she's still a menace, but she headbutts the door with renewed enthusiasm. You take it as a good omen. There's still snow, still cold, but now you can see the shift. Tiny buds on the barest branches, patches of earth beneath the snow, the way the light lingers in the sky just a few minutes longer. Enough to matter. You go to bed that night with a lighter blanket. Not much, but enough. You don't need a fire tonight. Not the whole night, at least. And as you lie there, eyes drifting closed, you whisper to no one in particular. We survived. The pig grunts in agreement. By the end of winter, everything feels a little unreal. The cold hasn't vanished. It still bites in the early morning, but it's lost its edge. It no longer wraps around you like a threat.
Now it's just background noise. The snow is melting in patches. The slush is turning to mud. The chickens are louder, pecking through straw with real enthusiasm. You find one scratching at a tiny green shoot. You nearly cry. Over a weed. But it's green. The hut still smells like smoke, stew and goat, but there's something else creeping in fresh air. You crack open the shutters without freezing to death. The room smells of earth and thawing wood. You smile like a fool. Today you carry your cloak out to the fence and hang it in the sun. Not to dry, just to feel. You sit on a stump and tilt your face toward the sky. Your sister laughs at you. You don't care. The sun is warm. Actually, warm. You could nap like this. You might. It's the first day you've been able to sit outside without regretting it. Other villagers emerge too, blinking in the light like moles. Someone plays a pipe. A group of children stomp in a puddle until it disappears. Two older women are arguing about when to start planting. It's not quite planting season, but the itch is there. Everyone feels it. You check the seed stash again. Lighter than it should be, but enough. Just enough to begin again. You sharpen tools, mend broken handles, retwist frayed rope. All of it in preparation. You want to prepare. That's how you know winter's really ending. Not because it's warm, but because you're thinking about what's next. You clear out the ashes from the hearth and sweep the floor without being asked. Not because it's filthy, it always is, but because it feels like the right thing to do. A kind of ritual. Clearing the way for the new season. The fire still burns at night, but more gently. No frantic wood piling, just a low, steady crackle. You sit beside it and notice the pig is shedding. You're shedding too, in a way, layers of fear, exhaustion, and soot. All sloughing off like dry bark. Your aunt hums again. Just a bit. A tune from last summer, soft and sweet and half remembered. It catches in your ears like pollen. Historians often emphasize how spring brought renewal to medieval peasants, not just physically, but mentally. After months of darkness, hardship, and scraping by the smallest signs of growth, brought euphoria. You get it now. You feel it. You even eat a warm meal outside. Just barley and broth sitting on a stone in the sun. But it tastes like joy. Everything tastes like joy right now. That night, the hut is quieter than usual. Not exhausted, rested. You crawl into bed still wearing a thinner tunic and stretch your legs without immediately curling up for warmth. The blanket feels lighter, the air softer. You hear a frog outside. A frog. You whisper to the ceiling, you made it. Because it wasn't a given. Not everyone did. There are huts in the village that are silent now. Pigs that no longer grunt. Tools that were never mended. But you're here. Breathing, laughing, dreaming. That's the real miracle. And as your eyes begin to close and the embers dim to a soft orange glow, you let your last thought be a simple one. Next winter, I'll be ready. Maybe. So now, as the fire fades to a warm hush and the last chill of the night settles in your bones, you can let your breath slow. The storms have passed, the bitter winds have softened, and even the frost on your window seems more like decoration than warning. You did it, you endured. The goat snoring. The pig has claimed half the bed again.
and you don't even mind. It's all familiar now, these noises, these smells, this life. It might be cold, it might be hard, but it's yours. And it's quieter now. The shutters are still a little loose. The roof still leaks on occasion, and your tunic still has that weird stain. But spring is on its way. You can almost hear the meltwater trickling beneath the soil. You can almost feel the first true warm wind just beyond the hill. It's coming. So breathe easy now. Your hands are tired, your feet are warm, and your heart is full of something close to peace. You'll wake tomorrow with a task list a mile long, but for tonight, you can simply rest. Let the soft hush of the fire carry you down into sleep. Let the echo of chickens and low lull of village chatter fade into the background. Let yourself dream not of frost and firewood, but of warm dirt growing things, and a sky filled with birdsong. You made it through the cold. You're going to be okay. End of script. Sweet dreams.